Do you have any tips for starting a cannabis business?
My first tip is probably don't start one. Yeah. I mean, I think people, initially the sort of understanding was I'm going to start, it's like striking gold. It's like the gold rush. And at least in California, the gold rush is pretty much done when
Yeah.
when it comes to cannabis. So people, who are looking to get into the business right now, I really just start with like, are you sure that this is what you want to do? Because it's really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people want to get into cannabis not realizing that the reason why it was so lucrative was because it was illegal.
I know.
You didn't have insurance, security, overhead, all the expenses that come with running a legal business. So now that you have to factor all of that in and you don't get those tax deductions that you would normally get because it's a Schedule 1 product, there's just not a lot of money in cannabis, unfortunately.
Yeah, the profit margins are real slim. The competition is real high. Right now in California, at least, we're dealing with a problem of oversupply. So maybe with federal legalization, that'll be let up a bit. But it's just really about branding and marketing and shelf space. And so if you don't have a retail, if you're a producer and you don't have a retail, it can be real tough. So I mean, it's real challenging. I mean, there are people that are succeeding in it, but I don't know how. It's very hard. It's very difficult. You have to pay lawyers, you have to pay taxes, regulatory concerns, compliance inspections. I mean, everything.
Yeah. So, fun fact, running a cannabis business is really expensive and you need millions of dollars in the California industry. Can you talk to us about Oklahoma's industry? Because I hear that's where the gold rush is, the green rush.
Yeah, and I think that window is closing too. But that it just because it was sort of like a free for all, no cap, no oversight, no regulation, no taxes. A lot of consumers were coming in from the surrounding states, so that was kind of like very lucrative. There might have been some folks who were crossing state lines,
Maybe.
maybe one or two. So yes, I don't know how much longer that's going to last. I think really where we're headed is unfortunately just kind of like conglomerate.
Yeah.
The True Leaf and the Cure Leaf and those companies are really really taking a stronghold. What's interesting though is that a lot of those companies are not in California yet.
Correct. Yeah. It's 2023. They're allowed to enter, correct?
Well, 2023 is the year that you can get a Type 5 license. So
Mhm.
that's just a big growing license.
Right.
But I think those big companies have stayed out of California just because it's too messy.
Yeah.
And they can go into a market like, that has 5-10 licenses total for the whole state and use their influence to get a large percentage of those. And so it's essentially a monopoly or at least large market share.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not coming into California where it's a vast state, right? It's like one of the biggest states.
Mhm.
They have to compete with all of these other operators that have been here for 20 years already in the illicit market or the unlicensed market. And so I think that's why they're staying out for right now.
California is hard to compete in, and consumers don't really care about celebrity or big corporate names. They're more so concerned about quality. Californians love quality flower.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think there's like it's totally different in California because we've had access to cannabis for so long and high quality cannabis. I remember I lived in Amsterdam. And the one coffee shop that we all went to was LA Confidential. And it was like exported from LA to Amsterdam. Yeah, I mean, it's the best cannabis in the world. So it's really hard to compete. And also I think like there's a craft appetite.
Yeah.
Like, you want to try new things, you want a different vibe here and there. So
yeah.
Diverse SKUs or different brands is really important. But I know that wasn't your original question. Your original question was, how do you start one? You want to be well capitalized. You want to know if you do make the decision, you want to do your research, do your homework. Location. And what kind of business do you want to be in? Like really spend time on that business model. Do you want to be in cultivation? Do you want to be in distribution? all of the above, vertically integrated. Some say that that's the best business model, others say it's not. So
Yeah.
really decide. And then obviously, like the regulations and getting licensed is super complicated. You have to get a local license first, then a state license. So the locals have a lot of control. So a lot of localities don't even license or allow it or
Yeah.
have capped out. So then you have to make the decision. Maybe you buy an existing business that's millions of dollars, minimum. So there's a lot of research. We have a great blog on our site. There's a lot of great content out there, to
Yeah.
digest and consume. Spend the time. Make sure you have the capital from the beginning, though, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Definitely capital.
Yeah.
All right. So, let me start that question over. What are your thoughts on federal legalization? Do you think it's going to happen? Is it a reality?
Yes, it will happen. I
Okay.
I don't know when. I think having seen California go through the legalization process was real eye-opening as to how complicated it is just in one state, a
Yeah.
large state, but in one state. So federally, it would be to come up with a regulatory scheme would be incredibly complicated unless they just sort of like punt it to
Yeah.
the locals, but they're going to want to have some oversight. Um, I think federal legalization would be the death of small businesses.
Yeah.
100%,
Yes.
because they're not going to be able to compete.
Yeah.
So everyone talks about federal legalization as if it's this great thing. And having been a part of the California legalization movement and being a proponent of it and seeing all the drawbacks and who's adversely impacted when we go federal, that's just going to be times 10. So for folks that are in the industry now, they're all just trying to basically set themselves up for an exit
Yes.
for federal legalization.
Yeah.
So I think it will happen. I don't know when. I don't know what will be like the catalyst. I think there has to be some sort of like, tipping point.
Yeah.
And what is that tipping point?
Yeah.
Is it the social justice and the criminal justice reform has been one big part of it, and that's one of the most important parts of it.
Yeah.
But then the business side of it is really what's probably got the lobbying dollars to push it over. What we saw with CBD was when Big Pharma really had this product that they wanted to push, and that's when
Yeah.
it got descheduled, when hemp got descheduled. So there's going to have to be some really big interest. That's the tipping point there, I think.
Okay. So, what my thoughts on
Yeah.
okay. So, my thoughts on federal legalization is that I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
I look at the history, and if you're in cannabis, you should definitely read The New Jim Crow. But if you look at the history, we went from chattel slavery to convict leasing camps, which was worse because prior to that, you would want to keep your enslaved people alive because you needed them for free labor. In convict leasing camps, it's a lease, so you could work them to death.
Oh my God.
Then we moved to Jim Crow, which moved to mass incarceration. So this country, which was built on free labor, still to this day receives free labor through the 13th Amendment. And I don't think that they're going to be willing to legalize cannabis on a federal level because you're affecting, one, that free labor, two, all the people that are employed by prisons. The prison guard population is a really big lobbying group, almost 1 million people, plus the suppliers and manufacturers of all things in prisons, including the weapons that the guards carry, the uniforms. You also have to factor in that these prisons are in small towns, and those small towns receive these inmates, and these are population counts. And what does that affect? That affects the count for the census, which affects funding and seats in the House, in Congress. So I think that there's no way, and heck, there are too many interests that need this to be illegal so that we can continue the for-profit private industry, which capitalizes on our mistakes and criminalizes us for non-crimes with no victims.
I
So,
think that you could even see a world where there is federal legalization and you still have criminalization, right?
yeah.
Where the big business interests are able to push their agenda and
Mhm.
make it profitable for themselves while still maintaining, those that are in the prisons. I think that that could happen, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, or at least those folks will be kept out of
Yeah.
the industry, like we're seeing, for example, in states where it's
Yeah.
legal. Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think we are pretty far away from it.
Yeah.
I think it's just not that. I think, like I said, I don't think there's like that one like catalyst, that
Yeah.
one thing that's going to push it over the edge to make it super important for,
Yeah. Well,
I don't
my
know.
dream with legalization is before we get to legalization, we finally accept that this is a plant that grows like any other plants, and we treat it as such. Because I couldn't imagine my strawberries being taxed and treated a certain way based upon how much red the strawberry contains or how large it is. Could you imagine having to spend that much on any other produce? So I'm really hoping it's like the .com boom where it just kind of bust and we realize, oh, we can't really, do this. So I'm hoping we get to that point where it's like, oh, it's just like any other herb or vegetable. Let's calm down.
Well, if you look at the MORE Act and, some of the federal bills that are being proposed, there is like a potency tax, which is what you're
Correct.
talking about.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's a potency tax in New York.
There's one in Illinois for sure.
Yeah, there's one in New
Yeah.
York. And then even in California with CBD, the new bill for CBD, it's like, is it intoxicating? And if
Yeah.
it's intoxicating, then it has certain sort of
Yeah.
takes this regulatory path. And if it's not intoxicating, it's really not regulated. And it's really interesting, because all of these lawmakers just have no idea.
They don't know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing.
At all.
And it's it's obviously a big sort of undertaking, and kudos, at least they're doing something, I guess.
Mhm.
But I don't know. It's a big mess, and it's going to stay a big mess for a
Yeah.
long time. It's just so interesting how cannabis encompasses across the board all of these like socioeconomic, political, racial, all of these different types of political ideas.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think what makes cannabis so expensive is the prohibition. You don't know how much is on the market. You don't know how much anything costs to produce it. So the control is pretty much the black market. So they set the prices. Now, with legality, your vegetables shouldn't be that expensive. I'm sorry. But hopefully these big companies, once they kind of eat everything away and it becomes kind of what happened with alcohol, hopefully we as a people realize we don't need them to grow our cannabis. And that's why we really have to protect homegrown cannabis so that we can source it for ourselves. But there's a lot of these big companies who are trying to eliminate homegrown so that they don't have their profit margins cut into. Not for the love of the plant, but for the love of business. So,
Yeah, the one good thing I would say about like sort of big corporate coming into cannabis is that it will become just a commodity,
mhm,
right? They will have the lobbying dollars and power to bring the
mhm.
prices down, the taxes down,
Yeah,
the large scale production. Yeah, I mean, I think like you think about cigarettes, for example, cigarettes have a really high tax.
yeah,
Right. So, but cigarettes we know kill us
yeah,
and are highly addictive
yeah.
and all of these other things. None of that is true of cannabis,
Correct.
but we're still treating it that way,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So like a pack of 15, 20, whatever's in a pack of cigarettes is, I don't know what it is in California now, like $10, which is way more than it was, 10 years ago. But
Mhm.
a pack of, I don't know, joints is $50.
Yeah. Plus tax.
plus lots of tax.
Yes.
Plus 27% here in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at it like side by side like that, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, very much so. One is helping your body, the other one is shortening your days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your
Insane.
quality of life. And yeah, I mean, it's just, that is crazy. I never actually thought about that. Like you compare side by side of a pack of cigarettes. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, when you think about it, to stay healthy in this country, to eat organically, to eat fresh and clean, it's much more expensive.
True.
So yeah, your cannabis is going to be much more expensive because it's healing you. But the thing that will kill you, well, here's, 4x difference in the price. So it's unfair. Yeah.
Wow.
But that's grocery stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Let's leave.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
All right. So let's see. The next one we have tips for starting a cannabis. Know your rights. Okay. So a lot of cannabis consumers.
Are you a consumer?
Bloopers. So many cannabis consumers still have anxiety around the fact that the plant is still quasi-legal. Do you have any tips for knowing your rights?
Yeah, so I started actually as a criminal defense attorney.
Okay.
Many, many years ago. And so this used to be sort of my, and at that time there was just medical, there was no adult use. And, there were far less rights than you have today, at least in California, right? This is, different from state to state, but across the nation, we're all governed by the Constitution. So the one sort of constant throughout the United States is that you have the Bill of Rights, which is the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the Sixth Amendment. So your Fourth Amendment right is to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. How that translates is that you have the right to withhold consent for an unlawful search. Sometimes they're going to search your vehicle, your home, your person without your consent. There's nothing really that you can do about that. But the one thing that you can do is assert your right by withholding consent. And the good thing about doing that is that your lawyer later on can say, Your Honor, my client, said I do not consent, so this search is unlawful. It's not for you to decide in that moment with the police officer whether they have probable cause, whether they can conduct the search or not. That's not your job. Your job is to say, Officer, I do not consent to this search. And that's a search of your person. That's a search of your vehicle. And that's a search of your home as well. There are different rights for each type of search. So a search of your vehicle, for example, is less protected than a search of your home. So that's why they can search your car without a warrant, but they can't search your home necessarily without a warrant unless there's certain circumstances. So take home, I do not consent to a search. That's the Fourth Amendment. Under the Fifth Amendment, you say, I assert my right to remain silent. That's your right to not incriminate yourself. You have to actually say, I assert my right to remain silent. If you just remain silent, that's kind of questionable, right? But I always express it as sort of like a light switch. Like when you say, I assert my right to remain silent, you've turned your switch on, your protection on. So anything you say thereafter is probably inadmissible in court unless you quote unquote spontaneously utter it.
Okay.
So if you say, I assert my right to remain silent and the officer keeps questioning you, anything you say after that is inadmissible in court, and you kind of have this like umbrella of protection. But if you say, I assert my right to remain silent, and then you're sitting in the back of the police vehicle and you're like, by the way, I was smoking tons of weed and I sell it, and right, you're spontaneously saying it out of your sort of own will, then that might be admissible. So I assert my right to remain silent and then zip it, right?
Okay.
Shut the bleep up. Just don't do it. And then the Sixth Amendment is your right to an attorney. So that's your right to seek counsel. So I would say, I do not consent to a search. I assert my right to remain silent, and I'd like to see my lawyer, please.
Okay. Those are the 3 lines.
And I still have it on this day on my business cards.
Okay. Yeah.
For folks, because people just in that moment, you're like, I don't know what to do. And, it's a high pressure environment. Police officers are very skilled at what they do, and it's their job to get you to actually,
self-incriminate.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they're very good at doing it. So your job is just to say those 3 things.
Yeah.
And then actually just sit there and not say anything.
Okay. So repeat after me. I do not consent to this search. I assert to remain silent. and I want to talk to my lawyer.
Mhm.
Those 3 things. Memorize it.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And you can say, or you can just say, I invoke the 5th, I invoke the 4th, and the 6th. That might even be enough if you can't
4,
remember.
5, and 6. They're
4, 5, and
consecutive.
6. That's all you got to know. And then from there, you let your lawyer take it after the fact, right? In the moment, just you can't prevent the officer from doing whatever he or she is going to do.
Yeah. Shh. That was good. All right. The next one. Ooh. Okay. Legal tips for moms who smoke weed. Okay. All right. So I'm a mom, and there are many canna moms out there who are finally out and loud and proud in admitting that we have given up the hangovers in exchange for the joints. Do you have any legal tips for canna moms and dads?
Yes. Parenting as a cannabis consumer is different. Unfortunately, it's not comparable necessarily to drinking a glass of wine or having a bottle of wine or even a bottle of tequila around. Just because it is what it is.
Right.
So the agency that usually is going to be your challenge is Child Protective Services, depending on what state you're in, but that's generally the case. And they operate under a different set of rules. And generally, their guiding principle is whether there's evidence of negligence. And that's a very broad sort of standard. And they have a lot of discretion. So to sort of make sure that you are not demonstrating any signs of negligence, you want to keep your cannabis locked up, out of sight, out inaccessible. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with consuming in front of your child. I think that's a personal decision. I don't think that per se shows negligence or
Right.
neglect. But in some states it might, and probably not here in California. I've had some cases early in my career where moms who were about to give birth admitted to the nurse practitioner or the doctor that they had smoked during pregnancy or smoked, before they came to the hospital to deal with the pain. And that can be a big deal.
Yeah.
So that is something to be aware of, because they can actually prevent the mother from breastfeeding.
Right.
Or they can ask you if you're willing to take a drug test. I say no. I would say no.
Yeah.
And that's your right, at least in California, to say no.
Okay.
So those are a couple things that you can do. And then just outside of illegal, just obviously be smart about it, right? Like no driving with cannabis and smoking. Don't let your kids get into it. A lot of people get into trouble with edibles.
Yeah.
Because the kids get into the edibles. So that's when it's really important to keep it locked up. The actual flower itself.
Kids are not interested in stealing your vegetables.
Yeah. And
they don't care.
It just, if you taste it, it's like,
yuck.
But edibles can be dangerous. I've seen a lot of cases where kids get into a pack of edibles.
Yeah.
End up at a hospital. And luckily, nobody dies from cannabis, but they can sort of get into a almost coma-like state for a long time, for a day or whatever, 2 days. But the legal ramifications can be quite severe.
Absolutely. THC in your child's system, the legal ramifications are high. Tips from me: make sure when you go to pick your kid up or you're going to extracurricular activities that you don't smell like it. Your eyes aren't bloodshot. Maybe you've brushed your teeth, changed your shirt. I would also say, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you tell no one. You tell no one, not your doctors, not a family member, not a friend. There are a lot of people who are still affected by prohibition and everything that they were taught by the DARE program. So it's best if you keep that close to who needs to know, which is probably your partner, and no one else. So you have to do what's best for your child at all times, and that includes your decision and your relationship with cannabis, but shh.
And speaking of partners, I have seen some nasty divorce cases where the partner will use the other partner's cannabis use as, in a custody case or, against them in some way. So, that's something to keep in mind as well. I have heard of that and seen that with my own eyes often.
Uh,
So be careful with that.
I think that is the importance of a medical license as well. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of demonstrating like, hey, yes, I consume cannabis, but I also have medical reasons as to why I do it. So you may be consuming cannabis in California without a license, but you're using it for menopausal pain or PMS or migraines. And if you have a license, that at least kind of can explain it a bit more versus you just going to your local dispensary and exercising your right for medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. And, just sort of someone claiming, like, yeah, my wife or my husband is just stoned all the time with the kids. That just is not a good look in court,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And you do have to explain it away. So it's something to consider if you are going through a divorce or you have a tumultuous relationship, maybe, make it a little more private.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. That was a good little dialogue. Oh, Snoop. Okay. Cannabis on the move. Legality of weed in planes, trains, automobiles. Okay. All right. So a lot of people travel with their cannabis. And in fact, I heard that you can fly out of LAX with up to an ounce. How true is this?
So LAX did put out a policy where they're not going to prosecute folks that are within the California limits. They kind of then pulled that policy because a lot of people sort of took it and ran with it, So you have to be careful, be mindful. The state that you're flying to might not be legal, and then anytime you're entering the federal airspace, you're technically governed by federal laws.
Yeah.
So generally, we don't see a problem with anybody who is carrying less than an ounce. The problem comes when we're really flying with a lot more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had, folks get in trouble for what looks like probably intent to sell,
Okay.
suitcases filled.
Yes.
Yeah. Suitcases filled and like those cases, what's interesting is what gets them in trouble is not the fact that they had suitcases full of weed. It's like this one guy, he had a bunch of glass jars in his carry-on.
Yeah.
And that went through TSA, and the glass jars were seen to be like a threat.
Okay.
So it wasn't the weed, it was the glass jars. So just be very careful. Something to be mindful of. I think also the batteries, you're not supposed to put them under the plane. So just be careful when it comes to that. But yeah, generally LAX is pretty lax about it. I know people fly internationally with it.
Yeah.
And have had some success. So just be mindful.
Yeah. Also, if it's in the shape of a grenade,
oh dang,
maybe don't take it on the airplane. You're for sure gonna get a bag inspection for your grenade shaped pipe or glass. Just reconsider it.
Yep. Not from personal experience, right?
No.
Yeah, and then the rules for vehicles, for cars, treat it like alcohol. Like you wouldn't be drinking and driving. You would put it in your trunk in a locked container or a sealed container. You can get in California, even where it's legal, you can get an open container violation if you have like an open joint in your passenger side. And then if it smells like cannabis in the car, that can often be enough for the officer to search your whole car. So, if you are smoking in the car, you might have your whole vehicle searched. So that's something to keep in mind. That's something that we see very often. So you could be facing a DUI, open container, and then possession if you have more than you're allowed to possess, possession with intent to sell if there's indicia of unlawful sales. So all of those things to keep in mind.
Okay. Well, what about if you have a medical license and you have, let's say, an open container that maybe you've consumed half of it? Are you protected with a medical license?
Not really. It should still be in the trunk.
Okay.
It should still be in the trunk or out of reach.
Okay.
Because even if you have a medical recommendation or ID card, that does not give you permission to drive
Right.
intoxicated.
Okay.
So it's the same thing like as if you had an oxy
Right.
prescription. You still shouldn't be driving while you're medicated. So best case is to keep it out of sight, out of mind, smell free.
Yeah.
And that's when you're gonna be the most protected.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. Women in cannabis, the challenges and hurdles, plus benefits and bonuses you both experience as women in this industry. Okay. Okay. Now, we are both women in cannabis, and with that comes challenges, just like any other industry. What are some of the hurdles and some of the good things that you've experienced in this industry?
I will say to start, the benefit was that, at least as a lawyer, I could enter the space relatively young and become an expert pretty quickly, right? If you're going into another area of the law that's been around for a significantly longer amount of time, then to sort of beat to become an expert and to become recognized is going to take you a lot longer. And as a woman, there's going to be a lot more of a barrier to entry in a lot of cases. And in cannabis, sort of like to trailblaze and to be that expert took me a shorter amount of time. So I think that is one of the benefits.
Yeah.
One of the challenges is still that, we're dealing with a lot of clients who are male. It's a male dominated industry. Sort of the stereotypical cannabis consumer or the market is geared towards kind of dudes, right? Bros.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I actually built my law firm with women around me so that, when I'm sitting in the conference room and it's myself and 10 men, I can bring another female attorney in and sort of balance that energy out. And I found that to be crucial.
Yeah.
I think things like getting paid, to be honest, things like accepting what I say as sort of the authority, even as a lawyer with all my experience and, being well known and all those kinds of things can be a challenge, right? They'll always kind of like second guess me or kind of like, well, I heard from so and so, and just coming to a place where I could be like, that's great that that's what you heard, but this is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And just being able to overcome that.
Mm-hmm.
I think just in general, it's a little bit biased towards men. And so just helping to combat that and work in that space. What about you? Like, what have you encountered?
Oh, come in. No. Yes. Oh, yeah. I was just about to answer. Make sure it's still going. Yay. Thank you. Okay. Ooh, being in this industry as a woman. So some of the benefits have been, I would say as a whole, I set out to explain the industry and the plant in a way that I wasn't able to find. So I've received a lot of open arm and acceptance there. And I think me being a woman and delivering this information absolutely helps. And I think that I'm less threatening in that way. But then there's the business side of me. And I think that's where that poses the challenge because as a woman, you kind of learn, especially a woman in business in male dominated industries, you know that you also have to kind of be dominant yourself. And men just typically are not a fan of nice and kind and sweet Tammy. When she goes into business mode, it's a different level. It's very matter of fact, linear, logical, problem solving. I'm here to execute. So I would say that's the biggest challenge that I receive is men giving their power over to a woman to lead. That is not something that Hollywood has taught them, their mothers, their majority of their experiences. So that's kind of what I'm up against in cannabis, as it is yet another male dominated industry.
1,000%. I would agree with that because I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a business owner and a businesswoman. And when I get on the phone and I'm like, I'm ready to control the conversation, there can be that struggle. Like
Yeah.
so many times where men just like talk over me
Yes.
or, it's, and as a woman, my response is always like, okay, you can't take it personal.
Yeah.
You have to teach them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as women in general, we always have to do 150%
Yes.
better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything that we do takes us longer. We have to show we're better at it. We have to be stronger. But we also have to be a woman.
Yeah, we have to be a woman. But then I also asked myself, was my response offensive, or was it offensive because it came from me as a woman? Because if I was a man, would you be offended, or would you be like, oh yeah, it's just business? So I think also men take us personal as well. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the ego is quite fragile, right?
Yes.
And so that is something that I have realized in recent years, that the male ego is fragile, and if it's challenged by a woman,
we're hitting on mommy issues.
Yeah, we're hitting on a lot of issues. And I think, just as more women come into the space, it's hopefully starting to change a little bit, but I see it, every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day. And I think the most important thing, and this is something that I talk about all the time, is lifting other women up.
Yes.
This is something that I think women have to do, because women do cut each other down.
Yes.
And it's something that like makes me emotional, because I see it. And when you're talking about women that are successful, and the first thing that is done is pointing out like a criticism of their physical appearance, or, just anything they're doing, like I always check myself. I'm like, if this was a man, what would be my reaction? Yeah. It would be like, he's the man. Yeah. He's, this guy is doing his thing. So I invite all women and men to check themselves.
Oh, yes. Get over our envy. I mean, it's so hard. You see somebody doing something that you want to do, and instead of being like, oh my gosh, I love that for her, you do things, whether intentional or not, to undercut them and to, stop them from their success, even if it's just with negative thoughts and energy. So that's something we as women have to unlearn and be very supportive. And just know that when you're cheering somebody on that has something or that is doing something that you want to do, you're actually blessing yourself. I totally believe that.
Yeah, that's totally right. And I'm sure you've felt this, like as a boss or as a manager, women that work for you can sometimes and I really didn't understand that until the last few years. I thought, oh, these women are on my team. But actually, they were in an envious position.
Yeah, because it's like, what about me?
Right.
Yes, I've experienced that.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And I think it's important, like, to just recognize, like, Tammy, you are amazing in your space and in what you're doing, and to give the women around you that praise. That is one of the things that I feel most passionate about, because I don't think that men are going to do that for us. No. And if we are cutting each other down and bringing that negative energy, that is where we're failing.
Yes, exactly. And Meital, you created a female cannabis firm. Like, what goals? Like, that is amazing. We have to be the ones to cheer each other on. Like you said, to your point, men are not thinking about that. It's on us, and we have to heal that.
Yeah. And I always tell myself, when I see a woman doing something that I admire, I think is great, I praise them. I say it out loud. I say it to myself, because that is the way that I would want someone to treat me. But beyond that, that's how we have to raise the collective consciousness. And it's not going to be done by one person or two people. It's got to be done by 50% of the population of women.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ooh, what a good conversation there.
That's something that I feel so serious about.
Yes, I agree. I think that that's something that I struggled with in this industry, and women who were my friends or that I worked with. And then, I'm getting opportunities and things that I know that they wanted, but came from, to me, and I empathize with their pain, but not so much with the actions they took after they had their pain, because I then became, a target of their grief. Yeah. And I did nothing. So Yeah, it's something that I've struggled with in this industry. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like even like celebrities like Kim Kardashian, when people try and cut her down, I'm like, because she did a sex tape. I'm like, that's
like
no,
literally everybody has done a sex tape. It just
exactly.
didn't get out to the public.
Yeah. Or even if it did get out to the public, they don't reach her level of success.
Right.
That is because of her. That is
Yeah.
because of what they've built as a family, what she's built as a family.
Yeah.
You know, people just rag on her. And I'm just like, if she was a man,
Yeah, Ray J doesn't get this heat.
if she were a man, she would be president.
Right. Well,
literally.
we had a president who, yeah. So,
I don't know.
That's great. Okay, a game of this or that. Butter, vape, smoker, edibles, wake and bake, or evening to. Ooh, this is fun. Okay. Now we are going to play a fun game of this or that. Okay. So
can you explain the rules?
Yeah, this or that. I'm going to give you 2 options and you've got to pick the first one that you comes to mind. It's like a rapid fire game. Yeah. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Flower or vaporizers?
Flower.
Edibles or smoking?
Oh, edibles.
Wake and bake or evening toker?
Wake and bake.
Sativa or indica?
Sativa.
Oh.
Are you an indica?
I mostly do OGs, which are classified as indica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sativa is usually more citrusy, and citrus like foods and like face washes and weed, I just don't react well.
You're not good with it.
Not, yeah.
I find that that's generally true with most people. I do like a hybrid.
Yeah.
I do like a good hybrid, but I feel very down sometimes with the OG. Like,
yeah.
I can just be like on a couch lock, or I can be just kind of like,
yeah.
And for me, the sativa or the hybrid just kind of inspires that creativity. Yeah. If it's too citrusy, though, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like I don't like a lemon or
yeah, it's got to be balanced if there is lemon for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a sativa is a bedtime story. If it's sweet, I am not going to be productive at all. Do not give me anything fruity or I will be no good.
Really?
Yeah.
So should I rapid fire you?
Yes.
All right. Should I do the same list or different list?
She just had 4 on there.
Okay. Okay. Let's play this or that. Okay. Bud or vape?
I'm going with bud all day.
Edible or smoke?
Smoke.
Wake and bake or evening?
Ooh, evening.
Sativa or indica?
Indica.
So we're opposites.
Yeah, opposites. I mean, and then indica, sativa, that binary, it doesn't exist. I harp on it all the time. But yeah, mostly indica because OGs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love flower. I love smoking. And if I could only smoke 1 time per day, it would be at the end of the day where I'm relaxing and it's my glass of wine if I had just 1 time.
I do like to I've always preferred to smoke. I just recently got more into edibles.
Yeah.
And I think it's also because of the kids. Like it's just like way easier. And then since I've done that, now when I smoke, I feel like a little bit tight here.
Okay.
And I used to be a cigarette smoker.
Okay.
So I love smoking.
Yeah.
And it's like I do the spliff a lot. And so I have to like kind of take myself off of it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I do herbal spliffs. So I'll mix.
We're talking about that. What do you mix in there?
I like a good one with like lavender, mullein, spearmint, raspberry leaf. I'll do anything. Mugwort, blue lotus, just whatever mood that I'm in or whatever like therapeutic benefit I'm seeking. But I would say like my most go-to would be lavender.
Do you mix it yourself or you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you mix it yourself.
Yes.
Where do you like get the lavender?
So I'll source it from like the farmer's market, or there's actually brands out there that you can find on Etsy or on Instagram that have like smokable herbs that are meant with like the intention of mixing with your cannabis.
There's a couple brands that do it.
Yeah, one of my favorites is Barbary. And they have like a trio that you can buy. One is like airplane, one is like I forget the other 2, but I used 1 strain of cannabis and all 3 herbs, and I had 3 different reactions to each mix with the same strain of outdoor cannabis, outdoor sun-grown cannabis. Yeah.
I have to try it. You know, if I smoke at night, I will not sleep.
Okay. Wow.
I will be up.
Wait, are you smoking sativas at night?
Anything. I cannot smoke. I cannot smoke at night. It's like, it takes away my appetite.
Okay.
It's like the opposite. It's a
Ah.
stimulant for
Yeah.
me. Takes away my appetite. I'm up. I'm thinking about everything I want to be doing. I'm working out. I'm a little manic. So that, I really like,
Okay.
maybe a little edible at night might work for me.
Okay.
But
Interesting. See,
Yeah.
this is why cannabis companies, please stop telling me what your cannabis is going to make me feel like.
Right.
It's not true. If you're saying this one's for cruise control and this one's for getting a workout in, no, it's not. No, it's not. Tell me the terpenes and let me figure it out for myself. We are in 2022 now. We're not using end result classifiers like we were. That's so 2018.
Right?
Stop it.
But can you smoke and work out?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. The
Like-
only thing that sucks is if I go into the steam room after my workout and I'm super high, like then that doesn't really work
Like
out well.
panic, or
Oh no, I'm
can't
just
breathe?
like, oh, I'm exhausted now.
Yeah.
But no, working out, having a pre-smoke before my workout lets me relax my body a little bit more and allows me to kind of get into the moment, especially before a tennis match or before I play squash. Because I am an overthinker, and if I have too much time to set up for a play, I'm going to botch it. I don't know why. It's just, but if I am going into just kind of like automatic
like
mode,
a flow.
it
Gets you
flows.
into a
Yeah.
flow.
My muscle memory can come in and it knows, what to do in a situation based upon, all
What
the.
about like a gym workout?
Oh, yeah. Before I lift, for sure. Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And I lift a couple
I'll
times a
just
week.
be like spacing, like
No.
like the intensity is gone.
Well, for me, the anger is gone because it's painful, right? Like
Yeah.
lifting heavy weights is sometimes you don't want to be there. And it's, the fact that I'm here and, I've calmed myself with my medicine before I've come in here. I'm less anxious and able to kind of like.
Maybe I need to try like an OG before I work out. I'll try that.
Yeah. Go. But your husband's a trainer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go slow. Like ease up on her.
I do yoga a lot, and if I smoke before yoga, they'll be like, right leg up, and it's like left leg, right arm, and I'm like, they're like, no, the other right
I'm just
arm.
free in here. Yeah,
This is the do what you feel portion of the yoga class.
that's my favorite part when it's a flow class where I'm just like, I don't know what everybody is doing here. All these names are foreign. I remember just standing around watching everyone in flow yoga, and the teacher was like, just dance if you feel like it. So I danced around the room. I was like, this is all I got.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
That's so funny.
All right. Well, I think we've got tons of content.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun.
So fun.
All right. Let's see.